Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar brought to you by Bursa Malaysia and managed by our company LifeChamp. Our webinar title today is Charging Forward, an investor's guide to the EV market landscape. My name is Shen Chu. I'm the moderator for this webinar. So in this session, we are going to delve deeper into the current EV landscape on a global setting, as well as its growth potential. We'll also examine and analyze the supply chain of EV manufacturing in Malaysia. So that's what we're going to do in this session. Now, before we begin, as usual, disclaimer, whatever we share in this webinar is only for educational purpose. In no way that we give any recommendation for you to buy or sell any listed securities that we mentioned here. If you decide to make any investment decision, you're solely responsible for all your investment risk. All right, so it gives me great honor to introduce our speaker today. He's a distinguished chartered financial analyst charter holder and the chief operating officer of Optimus. With 10 years of experience, he brings a wealth of experience and a proven track record of success. He is a former equity that emerged as champions in the inaugural Bursa Invest Hack 2020. So it's none other than Mr. Charlie Yuan. So Charlie, how are you today?
Great, Shane, and great participant. Let's kick off.
Right, good to see you. So I will just hand over the slide control to you.
Okay. Okay, to the most ambitious, most open-minded, and most eager to learn investor, good day to all of you, and congratulate to all of you because many others may take their time to rest, but then you guys came over here to try to learn more about the market and learn more about investment. And today we'll be talking about electric vehicle EV. So before I start my session, I would like to know how many of you are EV camp, which means that you support electric vehicle, or some of you may support the normal petrol car. So if you are EV camp, you just write EV in the chat box. If you are a petrol car, you like diesel or you like raw 95 car, then you put car in the chat box. So to have a gauge. Okay, so they are mixture. Some of you prefer EV, the other car, and even some of you ride hybrid. Okay, and there are even some comments on the EV. Okay, so today we'll be talking about this EV's investment sector and then whether it's a good or bad. Of course, there are merits and there are also risks behind. So it all depends on how you evaluate them. And before I start, let me ask you a question. So what do you think is electric vehicle favorite type of music? Like what type of music that electric vehicle favorite type of genre music that they like? Okay. Okay, classical. Okay. The answer is uh heavy metal because the what was the most important thing is in EV is the battery. So the is a side joke lah. So it's heavy metal. Okay, so disclaimer today. So today we'll be talking about a lot of maybe we'll touch a bit of stocks and also the industry of EV, but there's no means of me giving any advice, and this is purely on educational purpose. And previously, Shane has already introduced me, and over here you can see some of my merit moments. So previously, I won a few awards, and I'm a CFA charter holder, and also uh, I won multiple investment and trading competition during my uni time, and also even now, recently, I also won a Founder Stage Most Innovative Award recently for pitching of a edutech solution. Okay, so today I'll mainly cover four parts. One is the EV market growth potential. It's like what are you expecting from EV? Like how fast is their growth in EV in terms of global landscape and also local landscape. Second thing is EV key players, like who are in the EV ecosystem and why are who are the top players in this market. And then I'll talk about EV supply chain, how are they linked to charging station or even linked to battery manufacturer. And lastly, I will talk about risk in the EV. So it will be relatable to Malaysia's stock in some of them, but I will just touch and go. I won't dive deep into all those stock, and it will be just mentioning of the names in the parts of the EV. Okay, so for EV, we call it electric vehicle. For the traditional car that we use petrol, we call it ICE vehicle, which is internal combustion engine vehicle. So there's a very key difference between electric vehicle and internal combustion engine vehicle. And in between, we call them hybrid, which means that they can be either powered by electric or and also with the petrol lah. So for EV, I will address like two main thing about EV. So of course, if you see that the car is powered by a battery electric motor, then they draws the electricity from a battery. So that one is obviously a electric vehicle. And the traditional one is powered by fuel lah. So the key difference, there's a lot of key difference. I will just address the most important one. The two good part of the two good part of EV is the first one is they have lower maintenance compared to the traditional car, the ICE car lah. I'll just as short form I call it ICE vehicle. So with a lower maintenance, because EV the main part is the battery, the other parts there's fewer moving parts. Compared to the ICE car, there are more complex engine components. So that's why for maintenance, the cost for EV will definitely be lower lah. And also the second thing, everyone know environmental impact of EV is definitely lower. Means that they are most of the time they're using renewable energy, and then the pollution caused by EV is way way less compared to the fossil fuel consumption vehicle lah, which are like petrol and all those. And but at the same time, EV has two very major downside. The first one is we do know that by buying an EV car, you need to recharge the EV with a very long tenor, like most of the time 30 minutes up until several hours. And this is a major downside of EV compared to our vehicle. ICE vehicle will just you just go to petrol station, pump the petrol. Just within 5 to 10 minutes, you can complete the cycle, and then you can continue on your road, drive to very far distance or anywhere lah. So this is a downside of EV. And the second downside of EV is there's charging infrastructure less widespread compared to the petrol station. Because you want to charge your car, you may be able to equip them in KL, but then when you head over to maybe some other place, there are less charging equipment. Then how do you continue to drive with this limited charging resources? Of course, we are seeing more and more widespread of the charging station, but then compared to petrol station, is still a major downside. And three reasons why EV is important. The first thing is environment, positive environment impact. So it will reduce greenhouse gases. So sometimes people will say in some forum, you will think that EV also pollute the environment. You are actually using lithium and all those on those component to produce the battery, such as lithium. But then based on statistic, the impact is actually way lesser than fossil fuel lah. So it's around 40 to 50%. If you compare to the pollution benchmark of fossil fuel 100%, then the pollution cost due to the mining of this lithium and the entire life cycle of using the EV car will be around 40% of the pollution of the fossil fuel car. So this is already a major save up for our environment. The second thing is the energy efficiency and innovation. So EV convert actually 60% of electrical energy from the grid to power compared to the ICE car, the internal combustion engine vehicle. ICE car only translate the energy 20 to 30%. So EV is way more efficient in terms of their energy lah. And also the third thing is economic benefits because due to the lower maintenance compared to the conventional car, EVs have fewer parts and they do not need to use oil, so that all the parts in the EV will require less maintenance. So most of the time you heard that EV you just need to have your software update and then able to you are able to repair your car in a way that just like a phone. There's a software update, then your phone is back to normal. EV, most of the problem you can solve them with a software update. So here are the three reasons why EV is important. And based on statistic, this is a chart. You can see that this is the global electric car sales from 2014 to 2023, which is last year. So in this chart, you see uh the the electric car sales compared to the total car sales. So you can see that the latest figure is around last year was around 18%, and clearly it exceed the 10% benchmark. So why is it important to compare to a 10% benchmark? Because you remember the smartphone, once they reach once they exceed the 10% benchmark, they actually speed up the popularization of smartphone really fast. So last time back to some history when there's only the traditional cell phone, then when Apple iPhone come in and all the smartphone come in, at first it's quite hard to popularize because there's no ecosystem for it. But then when it exceed the 10%, then suddenly everyone is using smartphone. So there's the transition part. And over this chart, you can see that there's a tweak in the 2020, which is like a turning point of in 2020, there's a turning point for the global electric car sales. Suddenly it accelerate. Partially is due to the COVID and the shift in consumer behavior, but most important is one of the key factor is probably due to Biden administration because Biden is very EV. Biden supports EV a lot compared to the previous president, which is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump support a lot of field oriented. So that's the difference between the two presidents. So there's actually a very key difference, and there's a new era for EV. So since 2020, it actually accelerate, and then until 2023 last year, 18% of the car sales is actually uh EV. Okay. And based on different countries, we can see the EV adoption rate. For China is this 2023 sales figure lah. So for China is 54.5% out of the total EV sales. So you can see that China is leading in the race, and the reason is actually the population in China is higher, and then also the cheaper prices compared to the European EV or USA EV. So China is very focused on developing the EV, and then from the start they know that their positioning is on EV. So that's why for them they kind of have a lot of policy prioritize the development of electric vehicle car. And even for US, you can see that US only 12% of total EV sales. US is less than China. Despite Tesla is from US, everyone know Tesla, and EV is made famous due to Tesla, even though Tesla is not the first EV, but then it's made famous by Tesla. The reason is US is because China has a lot of EV brands. For US, if you ask a person walking on the street, then most of the time, name me a EV from US, they will just say Tesla. But then if you ask someone, name me a EV from China, then they'll give you a lot of names like BYD, Xiaopeng, Geely, NIO, all these. There's already many names from China. So that's why there's more competition in China, and then the price is keeping lower for EV manufacturer from China. So that's why we can see from China it's more popular it's popularized EV is more popularized in China compared to US. Of course, Europe is 28%. We can see that certain countries in Europe like Norway, they even ban the internal combustion engine vehicle starting from 2025. And also EU and UK plan for EV sales to reach about 80% by 2030. So they're actually pushing the agenda forward for EV for all these European countries. And the rest are 5.5%. Okay, so however, for in terms of uh, Malaysia, the EV adoption rate is still relatively low lah. You can see there's only 1.2% of total car registered as EV from January 2022 to April 2024. There's only 1.2% of cars are EV registered within this period. So you can tell that for Malaysia wise, we are still in very early stage. We haven't even reached the 10% benchmark, which is the smartphone benchmark that I mentioned earlier. And also other you can see that diesel 0.6%, hybrid 2.5%, green diesel. Green diesel actually is diesel generated from sustainable sources lah, like for example, uh, biodiesel, vegetable oil, animal fats, all those are green diesel. Compared to non-renewable diesel like petroleum diesel, so there's a key difference. Lor. So you can tell that electric vehicle is still very, very low in terms of percentage, and majority of the car are still petrol car, lah, which is our RAW 95 or RAW 97. So diesel price hike, you can see from the graph, RAW 95 price hike will definitely impact a lot of consumer, but then diesel is relatively smaller for the population that's using diesel cars. Okay. Okay, so this is actually the sales of hybrid and electric vehicles in Malaysia from the same tenor 2012 to first half of 2024. So you can see that throughout the years, hybrid vehicles are and also electric vehicles are growing. The blue one is hybrid vehicle, and the orange one is electric vehicle. And to add these two up is the gray color line. You can see the gray color line is the total of hybrid and electric vehicle. So since 2020 the COVID, and then we can see there's increase, and even for first half of 2024, the first half of 2024 is more than 50% of 2023 in total for the for for the electric vehicle lah. So from here you can tell that electric vehicle is gaining popularity compared to hybrid car as well. So, so of course, hybrid car people are still looking forward to it because there's more options. You are not just relying on the electric lah. So there's like a more safety net for you, and both you can tell that hybrid is still more popular compared to EV now. But then EV is gaining popularity throughout the years, and particularly with so many policy that give benefits to EV buyers in Malaysia. So for EV total industry volume, you can see that this is what we pledge we want to achieve. So this is the total industry volume for EVs, which means that the total EVs sold in the country within the time frame. So you can see that EV, we are trying to reach 15% by 2030, 40% by 2040, and 80% by 2050. So of course, throughout the years, there may meet some hardship or some difficulties. Particularly now, some people think that whether can reach or not, because there seems a lot of hurdle. We do need to address this hurdle. Some of the main hurdles are the energy reserve margin, because our country, the electricity generated, of course, is not unlimited one. It's limited one. That we are The energy reserve margin for our country is definitely limited, and to know that so many data center company coming in to Malaysia to build their data center, that part we need a lot of electricity, and EV also need a lot of electricity. Then the energy reserve margin is actually particularly worrying. Yeah. So which means that we do not have a margin to keep us continue to adopt a higher level of EV in our country. So that one is definitely a very key issue in the EV now. And second thing is generally EV is more expensive, and also not to forget about the infrastructure issue, which means that the charging station you need to build all those, and couple with the electricity net, all those. So there's actually a lot of difficulties to solve to be able to reach all this target, which is 18%, 15%, 40%, 80% by 2030 up till 2050. So all these are actually something to be mindful of lah. And this is three bar chart. You can see this is the forecast of global EV market size by 2025 and 2030. So this left one is 2025 and the right side is 2030. So what is the difference between these three? So this one, to make it simple, the left side one, this is seated policy scenario, which means that this is the projection based on policy and regulation in the country themselves. So this is the more, it's like the worst case lah. And this is like the base case. Base case, which means that this is the announced pledge scenario. So this each country pledge to Paris Agreement or any agreement for renewable sources in the world. We pledge for our target. So this is the consensus pledge by all of the countries. And of course, there's the right side, there's a net zero scenario. Net zero scenario means is the in consensus, all the entire world we wish to achieve what by 2030. So you can see certainly compare 2030 is definitely higher than 2025 for all the countries within the segment, with the country segment within this bar chart. There's China, Europe, US, Japan, India, others, and global. So global is we sum all the countries together lah. So all countries actually promise to move the needle forward to adapt this EV. So we can see that it's not just one country pushing the needle, is most of the country are actually trying their best to save our world from non-renewable energy lah. Because non-renewable energy is not sustainable. And once we finish up fossil fuel or petroleum, then the world will be damaged as well. So for Malaysia, we also push the needle forward, particularly with six incentive from the government. So I'll quickly talk about this incentive, including import duty. So for completely built up EVs that are fully imported from overseas, so they have the exemption up until December 2025. And for locally assembled EV, they have the exemption up until 2027. So you may ask, why is locally assembled EV have a longer tax exemption period? Particularly is due to local brands assembling EVs. For example, Proton. Proton, they have their EMAS, EMAS, which is their EV version of car. So they coin them as EMAS, small letter E and then MAS for Malaysia, Electric Malaysia. So for Proton, they will actually have them. They will actually cooperate with Geely lah, Geely from China, and then they will actually assemble the EV in Malaysia so that when Proton launch them, they have a longer tax incentive, tax exemption compared to the other completely built up EVs. So for those that are new to cars, we normally have two category. Completely built up means that it's completely built and then imported into Malaysia. The second one is completely knocked down, CKD. CKD means that the parts are the parts are knocked down into smaller parts, and then when they come into Malaysia, then only they are assembled and made into a full car. So these are two different kind of car terms that for investor you may need to know the difference. And is it possible to extend the import and exercise duty? I I'm biased that possibly it will be extended lah because the adoption rate of EV is still low in Malaysia, and then the next budget may reintroduce the further duty exemption for EVs car. So this is the first incentive for the government. Second is the road tax exemption. From here you can see that EVs are exempted from paying road tax until December 2025. And even after 2026, their tax rate are still lower compared to ICE car, to the internal combustion engine car. The thing is subsidy to charging facility. So if you are buying charging facility, then you will enjoy tax relief as well. So this 2,500 tax relief until 2027. So as a ballpark figure, a charging station is around 3,000 to 8,000, around that range, depending on the kilowatt of your charger. So you will get a 2,500 tax relief if you install a charging station, charging facility in your house or even in your office. Of course, there's electric bike, but then we are not touching so much about electric bike today. And green technology incentive. So for companies that are adapting EVs, and they are also fall under the green technology companies lah. So they are actually double tax incentive for EV the entire EV charging system, including the solar. If you install solar panel and then use the electricity to charge your vehicle, then all these are falls under the green technology incentive. Okay, and also for electric vehicle, Jaya also is the low carbon city. So electric vehicle will be the official car for the ministers and ministry. And also we can see that Putrajaya, we are installing a lot of solar panels. So there's a lot of incentive position for our EVs that we can see. Next, I'll move to the second part, which is the EV key players. For the top 10 global EV players, I believe most of them you guys heard of them because they are actually very familiar names. BYD from China, Tesla from US, Volkswagen from Germany, General Motors from US, Stellantis, Geely, BMW, Hyundai, GAC, Mercedes-Benz. So all these are quite familiar name for you. So over this chart, you can see there's BEV and and PHEV. BEV means the battery EV, and PHEV means plug-in hybrid EV, which means this you can kind of categorize this as the hybrid one, and this one is the battery one. So over here, you can see that BYD is the largest EV manufacturer, and followed up by Tesla in the global scene. And you can see that BYD is i- is on top compared to Tesla. And the rest, some are European cars, also in the space of EV lah. So why is BYD so strong? Even for Malaysia, you can see that you can see that BYD, which is distributed by Simdabi Motors in Malaysia, which is a listed company in Busan, Malaysia. So for BYD, we can see that it's even higher than Tesla for first half of 2024 units. So, and this one will definitely uh BYD. I'll talk about why BYD is more popular later, but then you can see it's very comparable to the global scene, which BYD is the first, Tesla the second, then BMW, Cherry is also another China car, and other EV in Malaysia lah. So BYD is ranked the highest, followed by Tesla. So let's look into BYD. Why is BYD so popular or so generally accepted by the public? Of course, you can see the model type, the price, and also the percentage of all EV in Malaysia to compared to the to all EV model registered. So the highest one is BYD Auto 3 lah. And the second one is Tesla Model 3. So why of course BYD is relatively cheaper than Tesla, and you can see that for BYD we actually, even for any EV car, we rarely see price below 100,000 because there's actually a regulation saying doesn't allow 100,000 below 100,000 EV car to be imported into Malaysia. Partially, I believe is uh due to want to protect Proton because Proton later they will introduce a mass, which is their EV car, and it will definitely price at a lower price. And also due to EV car, th- they don't want people to put too much hype on it because EV car, even though you can buy it, but then the depreciation is actually quite high lah, which means that after 10 years, the battery will not cost a lot, and then the second-hand value will be lower. And from here, from the first one, the BYD is very strong because they are the second largest battery maker. So they make their own battery. The first, the largest battery maker is CATL, which is contemporarily Amperex Technology Company. Is a China listed company lah. So CATL is very famous for making battery. It's the largest battery manufacturer, and their market share is around 40%, where BYD is around 20%. So BYD itself, they make their own battery, so that's why they have the cost advantage, and also they are able to streamline the entire process. And even for Malaysia, our MITI, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, we they actually doesn't allow BYD that are priced below 100,000. So we actually have BYD that's priced below 100,000, that can be priced below 100,000, which is the BYD Qing. But then due to the uh, regulation, we do not import those that are less than 100,000 into Malaysia. And another thing why BYD and other China car is so they move so fast due to the catalyst from the China policy. They have a lot of good policy that support this EV development. So they actually speed up the process of BYD grabbing the market share compared to Tesla and other EV car. Compared to BYD EV, Tesla have all these Model 3, Model Y, which are more familiar for all of you. And all of them are exceeding the price of 100,000. So moving on, Ermas, Proton will unveil their Ermas, which their new electric vehicle brand. So Ermas is actually first introduced in 2010 by Proton, and for listed company wise, you guys do know that who who is in charge of Proton. So it's a joint venture between DRB Highcom, which is a listed company in Malaysia, and also Geely from China. So this is something for investor to know about. So Proton, they introduced this first hybrid ERMAS in 2010. They call it Proton ERMAS, and now they reintroduced the EV, the brand name. Back then was a hybrid, and now they want to put them as a EV sub brand for Proton. So ERMAS sounds like Go, but that is the short form for Electric Malaysia for ERMAS. So we will see more cheap EV coming up from Proton soon, and we're expecting them to come like around December or even earlier. And Proton ERMAS and will be unveiled by December 2024, and sales will begin 2025. So Geely is a listed company in China, and it's the China top 10 automakers. So the entire arrangement will actually speed up for Proton to release the EV in Malaysia because they are partner, and it will likely ERMAS, which are the EV from Proton, will be manufactured by Geely and assembled by Proton by DRB Hacom in Malaysia. So it will be a this kind of arrangement lah. And we're expecting maybe 100,000 for ERMAS, and even cheaper model coming up next. We do not know yet. Next, I'll talk about the EV supply chain, like what is in the electric vehicle. Like, for example, the EV brand and manufacturer I've already covered. What are the top EV company? Some are distributed by Malaysia listed company, which are the distributor, like BYD is by SMW. And some company dive into the EV charging station, and these companies are forward-looking and very positive in charging station, and they have part of their business in this segment. And we do not forget about the power network, Tenaga. Tenaga, the share price spiked up a lot throughout the years, and that's particularly due to the high demand for our electricity, not just about data center, but also the EV, also a lot of high requirement on the electricity. And for those those people that install charging station in their house, they will need solar panel for their power generation as well. So this is the EV ecosystem. You can see there's 5 layers over here. I will talk from the most upper layer, which is the energy generation. Energy generation could be solar, could be of mostly in Malaysia is solar, lah, but then in some countries there are wind, even there are even many different kind of renewable energy available, biomass, geo geothermal, all these are some example. And also after the energy is generated, then it will be transmitted through DSO and TSO. So these are the distribution system and the transmission system. And they will be transmitted to CPO. CPO is our charge point operator. So a lot of our charging point are managed by the operator. So all these operator, for example, charge EV, PMB Electron, Jom Charge, Setel from Petronas, all these are charge operator. So with this charge operator, they will also need to provide a app. So you guys do know that to charge EV, you need to download mobile app, and then you need to pay through the mobile app, and also the customer facing services will be related to the app lor. So this is the EMSP lah. EMSP stands for e-mobility service provider. So you need to have a CPO, a charge point operator with an app. And EMSP also the same, there are different kind of app. For example, one of the famous ones is the Setel, Jom Charge, and so on. And after the charge point, then we will charge our EV. And the entire thing will need to go through compliance and regulating authorities. So these are the top 10 EV global brands. And for EV, one of the important part, the most important part is the battery. So BYD, of course, we mentioned that BYD manufacture their own battery, while the rest, most of them are using CATL. And the component of battery is very complicated, and you can see majority is the battery. Manufacturer of EV is very complicated. Battery alone, there's a lot of component in it, and there's also even other component like electric motor and inverter, which is part of the EV. And what I want to highlight is for battery, a few of the more important minerals are lithium, nickel, cobalt, and for BYD, they are actually uh u- they are using lithium. Most of them are using lithium, and the most popular one is still lithium. And for Malaysia, the for Malaysia wise, EV they are most of them are also using lithium battery. And you can see that this one just don't need to read all this. Just know that BYD, the more popular battery, they are called BYD Blade battery. And battery, there's a lot of chemistry there's a lot of science in it. So for lithium ion phosphate battery, there's cathode and anode. So most of the cathode, we are using lithium, nickel, cobalt, and for our anode, we are using graphite. So all this will definitely affect the global scenes, which if the country have a lot of this kind of raw minerals, then the big players will likely to come in to have their super house in the country. So for Tesla wise, their battery is also very focused on nickel and cobalt. So their key battery is called nickel cobalt aluminum battery lah. For Tesla, So for Tesla, previously there's a hype that we Tesla may invest in Malaysia, but then due to some discussion, Tesla actually are not likely to proceed s- their su- their their car manufacturing superhouse in Malaysia or not even in Indonesia or any Southeast Asia country. So Tesla car will still be manufactured in China and then imported from China from imported from China into Malaysia. So this is the arrangement for Tesla. So the current investment from Tesla in Malaysia is mostly the charging station part lah, uh, and not the manufacturing of the EVs. So Tesla cars produced in China will be exported to Southeast Asia. Okay. Another very big scene in Malaysia news is Infineon. They are setting up their biggest chip production site in Asia in Malaysia. So it definitely will speed up the EV space in Malaysia. So why is it so important? Because in Malaysia, there's a lot of technology company that's related to all the to Infineon product. And for Infineon, they have this called silicon carbide semiconductors. So the components such as inverters which is used in the EV production, inverters, will be part of the Infineon supply chain product lah. So by Infineon having their production site in Malaysia, setting up in Malaysia is actually a big win for Malaysia EV supply chain ecosystem. Okay, world's largest silicon carbide fiber app. So they produce up to 4,000 job and this Infineon. And for beneficiaries, all the company that's related to EVs, for example, just name a few lah, like MPI, Inari, Unisem, all these may benefit as well lah, due to the Infineon setting up the factory in Malaysia. And EV distributor, here you can see two listed company. One is SamW Motors under SamW Group, and then Bermas Auto, which is under B Auto lah, also a listed company in Malaysia. So the distributorship that most of the EV from China or even US or Europe, most of the EV are distributed by themselves. Just that BYD choose to be distributed by SamW Motor, which which because SamW knows the local market well, so BYD just leverage on them. And yeah, so the other three distributor for some cars, for some EV are all these three lah, but most of them actually prefer to be distributed on their own. For example, Tesla is distributing on themselves, uh, use, via themselves. BMW as well. Cherry, which the China car also, they are distributing themselves. Bermas Auto, you are expecting Kia and Xiaopeng to be distributed through Bermas Auto. Okay. And for EV charging station, you can see three levels of charging station. The first one is actually for household. Household, you are expecting to charge around 30 to 40 hours to fully charge your EV. For level 2, you are expecting them to be in shopping malls and all these 2.5 to 4.5 hours. You are expecting lower time because the kilowatt is higher for level 2 charging station, charging port. With 2.5 to 4.5 hour, you still need to go shopping and then buy some stuff, watch a movie, then only your car is fully charged. But then there's actually level 3 charging charging chargers lah. So this one is actually a high voltage direct current charger, and you only need 30 to 40 minutes to fully charge. Of course, level 3, I do not know why there's still less level 3. The ratio I do not know exactly, but then uh, there are possibilities with more advanced technology, then we can charge our EV faster. Some some companies in China, they even do not need to charge the EV, they just change the battery directly. So you just swap battery, your depleted battery, you just change into a new battery at the battery station. So from this, it's just like petrol station. You just queue up, change your battery, and then you continue to drive. So that's the ideal part lah. But then, of course, there's some issue in it. If your battery, are you sharing a battery with the entire for all owners of the EV? So this is something to think about. And public listed company that's related to EV charging station are like Petronas, which are Setel, and also Tenaga, which is TMB Electron. So they have their charger as well on in Malaysia. So as of 25th of June 2024, there's 2,600 charging point, and these are the expected charging point by 2025. 10,000 charging point by 2025, and DC charging point will increase from 1,000 to 1,500 by 2024, but then it's still the relatively minority chargers. And also for power network, we do know that Tenaga is actually playing a very big part in the electricity and also the entire ecosystem of this electric vehicle. So Tenaga, they play a few parts. They have their infrastructure, which is their distribution system operator to transmit the electricity from the electricity generated to the charging point. So they are in charge of the distribution system and also the transmission. And Tenaga themselves actually also provide charging points, which is called TMB Electron. TMB Electron. And so charging point, they are called the TMB Electron, and they have their own app as well. So it's called Go to You app. So for now, we can see that EV cars have many apps. So if you are using different charger, then you need to download different apps. So now it's not streamlined yet lah. So we will see if for electric vehicle user phone, you will notice that they have many apps of EV charger inside. So for now, obviously with regulation coming in, we will see more streamlined process lah. And yeah, so Tenaga also provide electricity to charging station at homes. So for people household owners, especially for the landed one, if you are having EV, then you will most likely have the you will install a solar panel because solar panel is definitely more cost saving compared to you using TMB electricity to charge your EV. For solar panel, there's even solar company there's most of our solar company in Malaysia are actually EPCC, and you can see some very familiar names like Solar West, Saipark, Samaiden, Resolar, and yeah. So these are some parts of it. So EPCC, which means that the solar panel is not manufactured in Malaysia, just it's just commissioning in Malaysia in by a local company so that they can arrange and put your solar panel on top of your roof. So all these require EPC arrangement, And of course, the entire solar panel, you can't run away of O&M and decommissioning. So, which means that once the solar panel, their life is come to their end, the life of the solar panel need to be thrown away. They won't be thrown away directly. They will be decommissioning, which means they'll be recycled in a way so that the damage to the environment is less. So that will happen to the battery as well. So lastly, I will talk about some risks of EV. Now, what are some risks of EV? The major one will be Trump administration. We do know that back in 2016 to 2020, when Trump is in power, he really object the he object renewable energy sources. US even withdraw from the Paris Agreement against the zero emission, and Trump thinks that it's a burden for businesses this because at that time the EV ecosystem is still new, and then if that is definitely the, from Trump perspective is the environmental impact is still they can still tahan. So for Trump, he just against all this net zero emission at that time. So we are also seeing there were regulatory rollbacks, like previous president, they actually roll a lot of energy, or they're rolling a lot of regulation that is which includes like limiting greenhouse gases emission from power plants of or vehicles. But then Trump's just boost the domestic fossil fuel production, and Trump actually wants to reduce regulatory burdens on energy. So at that time, we see that from an investor point of view, we always see that Trump will be the one that be against renewable energy and EV, but he will be more pro towards traditional energy, which is our fossil fuel and oil. And if it depends on the US election, then we'll see it. Once Trump win, then we may see this landscape redevelop again. But then for now, it's still 50-50 lah, for whether Trump to win in the next election. Okay, so Trump actually focus on energy independence, which is the oil, gas, and coal. And Trump will definitely hit on the US-China tariff. He will actually put pressure on China still, and also it will definitely affect the cost of EV, especially the components like the battery, because most of the components, especially the battery, is from China, which are the CATL, the first, and the second is BYD. And Chinese EV market raced to Southeast Asia for growth amid US trade war. So we can see trade war actually kind of benefit Southeast Asia and countries like us. So for Malaysia, we do have many Malaysia companies that sell ATE. ATE stands for automatic testing equipment. For all these car manufacturers, they are actually using our product, which includes Vitrox, Great Tech, Pentamaster, Technovation. All these are some players in our technology scene. And of course, there's still opportunity in EV. There's also rising trend with many country pledging and even ban the ICE car. Like Denmark will ban in from 2030, and there's a lot of like 100% electrified stock, so they only sell EV cars. So all these are in the roadmap for the global EV trend. The second risk, I'll talk about three risks. The first risk is the Trump administration. The second risk is actually the energy reserve margin, which I talked about earlier. We can see that the power reserve margin, with the backup power supply, is not that high. So it's only projected to be 28% to 36% within 2024 to 2030. And we project demand for electric supply to increase by 3% each year. So we can see that electricity wise is still a concern for our country to fully embrace a lot of electric vehicle on road. And even for ESG issue, electricity 42% is still by from coal and 37% is from natural gas. So the renewable part, we will still need a lot of effort to boost up the renewable energy part for the electricity grid in Malaysia. And there's also one major risk, the third risk, the final risk, which is the hydrogen car. So many of you may be new to hydrogen car. Hydrogen car means that you are using a renewable energy. First, hydrogen car itself is also renewable energy, and they are actually uh produced. A lot of them are produced in Sarawak. So anyone of you missed my Sarawak talk, I think it was in March or February. You guys can look back into live chat videos. I talk about Sarawak in the full detail, and I talk about hydrogen energy a lot in that series. So hydrogen car is popularized by Japan because they want to skip EV and straight away produce hydrogen car. And kind of hydrogen car is very different from EV. EV you need to charge. Hydrogen car is just like going to a petrol station. You can pump the hydrogen in a uh, 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 liquefied manner, pump it into the hydrogen car. I don't think it's pump, but some are pumped, some are pumped into the cars, and the rest are actually just change the tank of the hydrogen tank. So all this will save a lot of time because EV, if you go to very far distance, you can't expect yourself to wait in the car for like 1 hour to fully charge. But then hydrogen car, you can actually quickly change the tank or pump the hydrogen fuel, then you can straight away go on the road again. And we can see Petroleum Sarawak, Petros, there's a lot of they have the hydrogen pump in Sarawak already. That one is for the Sarawak MRT lah. Okay, so I I exceed a bit of my time. So next I will try to address some Q&A question from the floor.
Thank you so much, Charlie, for sharing with us about the EV landscape on the global arena, as well as what the supply chain that's involved in EV manufacturing in Malaysia. So if any question to ask our speaker today, please write them at the Q&A box. Yeah, so we'll do our best to address the questions. The first question here is that how long can this EV business last as the hydrogen-driven business are fast?
Sorry, the line is breaking. I can't hear the question.
What's your is my line breaking?
Yeah, either
Can you
mine
hear
or
me
yours.
now?
I can hear you.
So the question
Okay.
is the question is from Chi saying, just now you were talking about hydrogen, right? So his question is, how long can this EV business last as the hydrogen car is catching up really fast, right? So like he just saw a new prototype hydrogen Toyota being driven around town.
Um, from Toyota and all those uh Japanese car maker, they are actually targeting to for them to use in Japan first, ah. And you do know that for hydrogen energy to be to be produced a hydrogen energy, you need a lot of energy as well. So that one's actually a big issue as well. So for now, Sarawak has a lot of hydro energy, so they have a lot of they deep forest and then a lot of mountains, so that the hydro energy is very strong in Sarawak. So for Sarawak, they are able to manufacture a lot of this hydrogen energy, and most of the hydrogen energy are expected to be exported to Japan. So for Japan to truly roll out this hydrogen car, they will actually import a lot of this hydrogen energy from Malaysia. So we'll be expecting Japanese company to be exporting, and then when Japanese they did give a timeline, like uh probably 2025 will have the first car, not the first car, which means 2025, between 2025 to 2030, they will try to popularize in Japan first. But then all this will probably happen in overseas first, and hydrogen, everyone do remember, uh hydrogen is is the in your chemistry, hydrogen is the smallest element, which means that it's very when hydrogen meets with oxygen in the air, then it will combust and create a combustion. So there's still a lot of worry happening in the market, scared that if there's accident, hydrogen leak into the air, then will it cause combustion? So all these are some stuff that need to be solved before they can safely roll out lah. Because we do know safety is first. So we are still expecting some timeline before it can be popularized in Malaysia lah. Whereas that EV is first popularized in China, then only after 5 to 7 years we can see them in Malaysia. So hydrogen car is not even popularized in Japan. It's only starting the engine. So to popularize in Malaysia, I expect to be maybe 10 years down the road lah. That's my view lah. Of course, it may be not correct.
Right, thanks, Charlie. So the next question is by Faisal Ahmad. So how do you assess the current valuation of EV related companies compared to their growth prospect and potential risks? Are there any signs of overvaluation in certain segments of the market?
Okay. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to download today's slide, you can. I have uploaded to website. You can just download.
Yeah, I think we will give you the link in a short while.
Okay. Okay. Valuation wise, uh, I I'm not too sure how to answer, but then of course, valuation will move faster than growth most of the time, because growth only kicks in when because valuation always comes in faster. So sometimes when investors see that PE is higher, the price earnings ratio is higher, then they will think it's quite hard to buy in the company. But then there's a reason for the PE or the valuation to be high, to be that high, because when the PE is when the PE is high, it means that there's forward looking towards the growth. So that's why with with the with the growth coming in later on, then the PE will drop back down. So the valuation will be justified later on. So sometimes when investor says that why PE is so high, you are still buying into the sector or the stock. But then that's not the real case because the future earnings will kick in later. So to balance between growth and risk, I believe I believe definitely is a sector that is worth looking into because the adoption and all the pledge for Paris Agreement, we are actually very uh we are actually very undergoing our procedure for it lah. So which means that we are very serious to meet all the pledge towards the global net zero emission and all those commitment. So the EV will definitely will be a long-term game. The risk hydrogen car, I believe even in future, because both are actually renewable energy. Hydrogen car is renewable energy. EV is also renewable energy car, especially you are using solar panel and all those. So with all this, I see mixture of this car in the market. So it's a long-term game lah. It's not like today you buy, then 10 years down the road, you will vanish. For example, previously there's a natural gas car that liquefied natural gas car. So that one, because natural gas is also a form of non-renewable energy, so very quickly the hype just passed by and then everything just goes up. So for EV wise, I believe it will be a different story compared to natural gas because EV you can the energy can be generated from renewable sources, which is the key reason we adopt EV. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Right, thanks, Charlie. So the next question is by Ashar. Given the importance of battery technology for the EV industry, how do you assess the current landscape for battery manufacturers and suppliers? Are there any emerging players that you find particularly promising?
Um, the battery CATL and BYD. Which, wait, never mind. Okay. Uh, I believe that big player will remain because CATL and BYD are now the first and second in terms of the battery making. And I believe China having such heavy policies for the EV and also renewable energy since they will still keep keep the momentum going lah. So technology wise, with because we can see that China is on EV, Japan is on hydrogen energy, and European battery in terms of market share is is way back behind China for the battery manufacturing. So CLTL is back then is also a very hot topic and also hot pick stock by global investor lah, CATL. So I would say I believe the big players will remain big lah. because it's definitely some a very you need a very full-fledged supply chain to be able to cover that. You need the raw material, you need to have the technology to manufacture the battery, and in terms of size, you are expecting them to be smaller. That you need to fit more energy within a smaller size. That's the future aspect of the EV, right? So I think all this require a lot of research and development and only the big players have the advantage to dive in all this research, and manufacturer is also a volume game. So they have the big big chips in their hands. So that's why they actually have the advantage. Of course, if you want any new players, I do not know. Maybe worth to research, but then yeah, I do not know at the moment.
All right, thanks, Charlie, for sharing some colors in this. The next question is by YCV. Are there any regulations controlling the charging prices by the charge point operators? We used to have this petrol price control. So that's the question.
Charging price by charge point operators. Um, I believe it is a free market. What do we call that? Free market. Well, free market. So it's b- free market dynamics. Free market mechanism. So if you charge too high, if the EV charger next door is cheaper, for sure the queue for the EV charger there will be more. In terms of regulation, I'm not too sure, but then with a free market mechanism, demand high, supply low, definitely charger price will be higher lah. And when there's more charging station, because it's not just Tenaga or Petronas is installing the charging station. A lot of companies like Yinsen also have their charging station. Yeah, so with more of the infrastructure like EV points, then we will see the price more competitive. But then I'm not really sure about the regulation. So yeah, okay. Hope that answered your question.
Right. All right. Thanks, Charlie. Now, just like in one of your slides, you mentioned about energy reserve margin. And the question by Ang is that is the energy reserve margin 28% after the EV energy and data center requirements? How about our grid transmission? What is the limitation and what are the is mitigation plan?
Wait. Okay, so yeah, so this actually 20241 will be the existing the projector for 20241 will be this range, which so the question is whether it's before data center and EV or after data center EV. So this one is at the point of that year lah, which means that data center haven't used up the reserve margin, so then uh will be at the point of the year. So data center wise, it's still very early stage because most of the data center they are still building up their infrastructure, but then they are not most of them are still not live yet. So if we see all this electricity demand needed for data center, so our power reserve will definitely be very worrying. So even for the projected 2024 to 2030, 28%. If let's say because because if you see the margin not enough, then definitely worrying for our entire Malaysia. So that's why we also see that a lot of countries they want to build data center, but they don't have the capacity. But for Malaysia wise, one good thing is from the Sabah Sarawak end, they can actually import energy from that side lah. For example, Singapore is building a undersea cable from Sarawak to transmit the electricity. So I so I think that Malaysia peninsula wise will be more worrying, but then we'll definitely find a way like importing electricity from Sarawak or find more means of for LSS like large scale solar companies, more large scale solar project so that more electricity is generated. Like our LSS now is five already, right? LSS five. So with all this, definitely we can keep up with the momentum. Okay, hopes that answer your question.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Now, just now you mentioned that the EV, electric vehicles, they depreciate steeper than ICE cars, right? So why is that so?
Depreciated faster than ICE car. Is
Yes,
that the
that's what you
question?
said. Yeah,
Okay.
depreciation, right? You mentioned that the
Yeah.
EV cars depreciate uh steeper or faster in
Yes.
value compared to
Yes. Okay.
internal
So
combustion
for
engine, right? So why is that so? So this question is from Yip.
so for the EV car, the main component is the battery. Without a battery, the entire EV is kind of useless. For for the battery wise, the lifetime of the battery is actually majority of the cost of the EV is will be from the battery lah. So once the battery already gone through their lifetime, so we do know that every time you charge your chargeable phone, then your phone sooner or later only can last for 5 years. After 5 years, is there second-hand value for your smartphone or iPhone? The value is actually even you trade in the monetary value is very low lah. So that's because the battery is the major part of the your phone major part of the EV. So let's say the battery doesn't stands for the function already. For example, after 10 years, you want to sell your EV car, but then your battery is already 10 years old. Definitely you can't fully charge every time. Even though you fully charge, your battery will depreciate very fast, depleted very fast. So the battery is very lousy by the time, and the second-hand value for the EV car depends a lot on the number of years also. And the number of years once the battery, 10 years battery, you definitely won't buy. So that's why EV second-hand value is definitely lower than ICE car lah, because ICE car you are pumping petrol. Even though engine engine will deplete as well, but then engine life their life is actually up to 20, 30 years. You can last that long. So if you buy a new ICE car and then 10 years later you want to sell, the second-hand owner still can use the car very safely or easily. But for battery, but for EV is different lor, because EV your battery is already very lousy, so second-hand value is definitely very low. So that's why I depreciated a lot. Yeah.
Now I know that there's this Chinese EV maker Neo who has this uh facility called battery swapping. So in other words, instead of going to a charging station to charge your battery, when you reach the station, you just swap the battery. So it just takes 10 minutes for you to swap the battery. So what is your view on this?
Oh yeah, I did mention that in the my presentation just now. So my view is the major issue is whether there's consensus from the owners, because what if the battery you when you go to swap your battery, what if the battery you get has some problem? And does that count to your EV car? Because if your EV car is associated with the battery, then the battery got problem, then definitely you can't claim anything. So the swapping ecosystem lies highly on whether that that type of car, the ecosystem, they are okay to share the battery. It's either the EV maker they price in the battery for the user. Otherwise, if you are a new car owner, you definitely don't want to swap your battery because your battery is new. What if you for a lousy battery? And then even if you go to the charging station, you can't really charge the battery at at that at that speed because you just throw away your old battery and then no, not throw away. I mean you swap in your old battery. Then the charging station, could they evaluate whether the battery is up to the standard at that point? So that is actually a very arguable statement. So there's really comes towards the EV maker whether they want to pop. Of course, China, they are trying to popularize this among certain brands, but then it all lies with the trust issue, unless the EV maker themselves they want to price in the swapping mechanism into the EV car price lah. Otherwise, it will be a trust issue for a lot of owners. Yeah, hope that answer your question.
All right, I think we are running out of time, so let's do one last question. This question is on Lim. Do you mention that US has poor EV infrastructure, which is why Trump is against EV? Could you also share why China believes in EV so much?
Uh, for US wise, they have the infrastructure. Just that if you are using fossil fuel for transportation or any business, then it would definitely be cheaper, especially from 2016 to 2020. At that time, it's definitely cheaper for fossil fuel consumption compared to EV. So that's the history background lah. And also the charging station, I would say, of course, at that time it's not that many yet, but then that's not the priority problem lah. It's the costing issue lah, because EV is definitely more expensive than the ICE vehicle. Yeah. So the second question is on China. Why China why they want to push EV so much? I did read about China. They they understand that to lead in the car market, they can hardly gain market share for the traditional car because European are actually taking up a lot of the market share. So they see kind of like ahead of time. And at that time, China also believe in ESG, like all those environmental issue, they want to solve it. So they go all the way for better environmental control. So EV is definitely part of it. and to be ahead of other country in cars definitely is EV at that time because ICE car is saturated. Not to say saturated, but then to gain market share is definitely not that easy. To have a new blue ocean like EV is definitely a way to bring your car brand to the entire world. So that's why they look ahead of time. So Japan is even trying to look more ahead. So they want to skip through EV. They want to manufacture hydrogen car directly. Then will they succeed? Then we'll see in the next 5 years.
All right, thanks Charlie for
Okay.
sharing your view on these questions. So that's all the time we have for the Q&A session with Charlie. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning into this session, and thank you so much Charlie for speaking with us about EV in this webinar.